Star Wars is not the only event happening in the heavens at the moment. It's also the time the Geminid meteor shower reaches its celestial climax. From the northern hemisphere, the meteors originate high in the southwestern sky. From the southern hemisphere, they start low in the northwest. The shower peaks in the early hours, but traces are visible all night long. Meteors are tiny pieces of dust that collide with our planet and burn up in the atmosphere. They occur annually when the Earth ploughs through individual streams of cosmic dust, which were once part of the tail of a comet.
Muslim leaders at a summit in Istanbul have condemned President Donald Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Turkey's foreign minister tweeted the final communique from the meeting of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which said the US president's decision was null and void and called on the world to recognize East Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital. There's been sharp criticism of Trump from Mahmoud Abbas. The Palestinian president described Trump's Jerusalem move as a crime. He added, "We don't accept, as Palestinians, Arabs and Muslims, we are no longer able to accept the role of America as mediator, for which the basic necessary condition is unbiased integrity." Trump's declaration last week, coupled with the intention to move the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, have been applauded by Benjamin Netanyahu. On Wednesday, the Israeli Prime Minister urged the Palestinians to halt what he called extremist statements and to work for peace. Meanwhile, in the West Bank city of Ramallah, several dozen Palestinian protesters took to the streets, burning tyres and clashing with Israeli forces. Several days of street protests in the Palestinian territories over Trump's announcement have largely died down, but there continues to be international concern about its impact on bringing peace to the region. Angela Merkel's Conservatives and Germany's Social Democrats have held their first tentative talks on renewing their coalition nearly 3 months after the country's general election. It follows the collapse of talks with other parties in November. Sensing Merkel's lack of options, SPD leader Martin Schulz is in a strong position. He's pushing for a cooperation coalition or COCO agreement, which only guarantees limited SPD support. Conservatives say that way lies uncertainty.
Eine COCO ist ein absolutes No-Go.
A COCO is an absolute no-go. I've no interest in talking with the SPD about such an arrangement. What matters is the prospects for our country. Secrecy has surrounded the talks, reflecting the sour mood between the two sides. The SPD had vowed to go into opposition following its bashing in the September vote. Now it might be Merkel's last chance for a fourth term as Chancellor and to avoid new elections.
An embarrassing loss in Parliament will be following Theresa May as she heads to Brussels to meet with EU leaders to discuss moving Brexit on to trade talks. It's the first time that the UK Prime Minister has lost a vote on her own business, and many claim that it will hamstring the government in Brexit negotiations. MPs narrowly voted in favour of an amendment to demand Parliament pass a separate bill to approve any final deal with the EU. But what does this really mean? Well, it's all about MPs' role in Brexit. Mrs May had already conceded that they would have a meaningful vote on the final proposal, but people were worried that elements of the withdrawal from the bloc could begin before the vote and therefore without their consent. This amendment will enshrine the vote into law, and therefore Brexit cannot begin until it has taken place. This could, in theory, allow MPs to send May back to the negotiating table if they do not like the deal.
Britain is aiming to secure a comprehensive free trade deal with the EU. After securing an initial agreement to move Brexit talks to a second phase, Prime Minister Theresa May is keen to start discussing future ties with the Brussels bloc. This primarily includes a type of trading agreement to offer greater certainty for business. The EU has been considering a post-Brexit free trade deal with the UK along the lines of one agreed last year with Canada, what Brexit Secretary David Davis refers to as Canada plus plus plus. But the UK economy is nearly twice the size of Canada's, and British officials say their current alignment with EU standards and trading links with the continent give them scope for an even deeper relationship. David Davis says he wants the agreement to be signed shortly after the UK leaves the bloc in 2019. Despite his confident tone, EU officials say they'll only launch negotiations on a legally binding treaty after Britain leaves and becomes a third country, according to draft negotiating guidelines.
Quite hard at the beginning of the week. It's going to be a bleak week, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but actually...
When you pay that internet bill, you're paying for a service, access to the web, whether you're browsing, gaming, or streaming.
The concept of net neutrality, as we refer to it these days, really means that internet service providers, the companies that give you internet access to bring those wires into your home, should treat all the content that comes across those wires equally.
But the Federal Communications Commission is voting on a proposal by Ajit Pai, the chairman, to repeal the rules protecting that equal treatment.
The heavy-handed regulations that were adopted 2 years ago were trying to solve a problem that simply didn't exist.
A problem that net neutrality supporters say could exist without regulations. The fear is that internet service providers could create fast lanes, giving preferential treatment to certain content and may charge more for access. It's created a backlash, including protests, and a letter signed by 32 senators urging the FCC to reconsider the proposal.
There could be a lot of favoritism with partnerships between service providers and content providers, or news organizations or political organizations.
The FCC will still require transparency from internet service providers, but if consumers aren't happy with the terms, they may be stuck with them. According to FCC data, about 40% of the country only has one option for internet service.
I don't think it's going to be the end of the world immediately, but it definitely opens the door to a lot of things that we may not want to deal with.
The repeal is expected to pass with a 3-2 vote along party lines. Liz McLaughlin, NBC News.
Yeah, I would be concerned.
It appears the kebab, favourite fast food for late-night revelling Germans, is safe. In the European Parliament, EU lawmakers narrowly defeated plans to ban an additive that's considered key in industrial meats for the popular dish. Kebabs use phosphate to keep the meat moist as it sits on its skewer. The vote was a close-run thing, the ban being defeated by only 3 votes. Proceedings were closely watched by Germany's Turkish doner kebab industry. It argued it would be wiped out if such a ban were introduced, while those proposing the ban insist the phosphate used in the frozen meat is a health risk for cardiovascular reasons. While the human body needs phosphates, excessive amounts can be bad for the heart and liver.
Since being delivered prematurely in November, Vanellope Hope Wilkins has undergone 3 operations, the first within an hour of her birth. The baby girl, who was born with her heart outside her body, is believed to be the first in the UK to survive with the extremely rare condition ectopia cordis. Her parents found out about it during a routine 16-week scan and were advised to terminate the pregnancy. In her most recent surgery, Vanellope's skin was used to cover the hole in her chest.
It's a beautiful moment, wasn't it? Absolutely beautiful. If you saw when she was first born to where she is now and what they've done, it's
beyond a miracle, isn't it?
Whilst Vanellope is doing well, her future is still uncertain. But for now, her parents help feed and change her nappies, and although they haven't yet managed to cuddle her, they know that day will come.
Televidente, otro espacio comercial, ahora nuestro back deporte.